Oop. Okay, so I just oops, the camera screwed up a bit there. I just walked up this log, which led up from that other log that fell down. It's kind of a couple deadfalls up from the river here. I was just out for a walk, and you can see all this sand. It looks like sand. It's just a skim of sand on top of the snow. If you step on it, you go plunging on through into snow. Same with all along the beach. It looks like a sandy beach with a little bit of white here and there. It's white here and there because it's snow underneath it, and there's a skim of sand on top because of blowing sand a couple of days ago. It's kind of weird. Anyway, and I'm going to stand on this log and talk for a couple of minutes here. Let's get this set up here and set it up on the, this is actually a deadfall, so I'm standing the camera up on top of the roots. I'm standing on the trunk of the tree and setting the camera on the roots. I'm trying to get this straightened up a little bit. That's probably right. Up there. All right. Now, I got to remember what I was going to talk about today. A little bit ahead of myself here. Let's see. Revolution, that was a couple days. Wildlife Radicals, that was a couple days ago. Who actually wants to change? That's an interesting one, isn't it? Who actually wants to change? Well, I would say that in reality, probably reality anyways, there's probably only a very small percentage of people who want to change. It's probably 0.00000, maybe it's 0% of people want to change. Why would I say this? What would make me jump to that kind of conclusion? Well, there's a couple of words here that I'm going to talk about. Homeostasis, inertia, and status quo. Okay, homeostasis, I looked it up. So I remember this word from a long time ago, and I started to think about it because of this word, actually, as to why is it that so many of us, myself included, and by being stuck in things, we say we don't want to be stuck in, but we actually are stuck in. So in reality, maybe we want to be. And the nature, well, this sort of a research comes up with these conclusions of certain, tendencies of life forms, or of the world at large, if you will, the earth at large, the natural world. Homeostasis is the tendency towards relatively stable equilibrium between interdependent elements. So if we consider ourselves to be a particular element, like an individual element, if you will, individual being, amongst what we perceive and feel and experience and so on as our world, our tendency, according to homeostasis, is to want to maintain that equilibrium, right? Inertia is another word. We often think of inertia as something going in a direction, right? Like Newton's law of motion, one of them he had was, an object that's in motion will remain in motion unless it is acted upon by a force. So that would be the same as if something was stopped. It would remain stopped unless something was to get it going, right? So inertia inertia is not in reference to motion or not. It's just in motion. It's in reference to a tendency. The tendency to do nothing or remain unchanged. It's another sort of a scientific observation of the world. Things want to stay the same unless something's acted upon. They're acted upon. Another one is status quo. Perhaps two words, I guess, but nevertheless, we often hear about it. And that is in reference to the existing state of affairs. So I would say, because of the nature of homeostasis and inertia, we tend to seek the status quo, which means to do nothing, or as little as possible, right? Now, so that sort of, explains, as far as I know, as far as I can find out why it is that myself or anybody else doesn't change, even though we say so, but we don't. It's because of these natures. And perhaps this is an evolutionary thing. You know, there's the evolution of adaptation, right? That nothing is going to change unless there's a need for it. There's got to be a reason for it. And when there's a reason for it, then there's the adaptation. So it seems like sometimes there is, or all the time, in order for there to be a change, there has to be a motivating force for the change. Just like that motion, object in motion in a certain direction, it's going to stay in that direction unless something acts upon it to kick it off of its trajectory, right? And so, I guess as conscious beings, if we say we want change at a certain point, we have to turn that into more than just saying about it and actually develop motivation to change. And I would say that in answer to the question, who wants to change? Nobody really wants to change. But change becomes inevitable when the motivation is strong enough. In the same way that that object is in motion and will continue in that same trajectory or will stay stable. By that same reasoning, it has to move relative to the amount of force that's impinged upon it. So when we are motivated, it's no longer whether we want to change or not. By these scientific observations of inertia and homeostasis, we have to change, in other words, because our normal is now a new normal. We now have whatever forces we had to maintain the status quo plus new forces. So there is a new status quo. It's like status quo plus, right? 2.0 or whatever. So in terms of improving the quality of our life experience, then, I mean, the quality of our life experience, I guess, is, as long as there's no motivation there, the highest quality we have is the one we have now. But one of the motivators in life, I would say, is pain. It's probably the biggest motivator. It's the motivator of when it gets hurting enough, we'll motivate ourselves to get back into the improved quality of life experience. And that becomes like a force upon the status quo. A force upon the existing state of affairs, which is our... And so these sort of thoughts, I think, help us to maybe become aware of motivations, becoming aware of the value of the pain, becoming aware of the value of the discomfort or the fear, and these sorts of what we would call negative experiences in life, because they are the sort of the first driver of the motivation, that force that's going to come in on us. You know, when the pain gets bad enough, then it's just a new status quo. It's a new status quo, and it's like I like to think of life as kind of like a river in a way. If you have a river that's flowing, it will stay in that state of flowing, making all those turns that it makes and so on. But if we build a dam on an angle and put another channel, that would be akin to the force hitting something in motion. It will turn, right? So our troubles and our and sometimes we even use the term roadblocks. Our troubles, our challenges that we run into, in a way, it's like the water running into the dam, right? They cause us to move. Well, I think we can become aware of, and not as though we want to necessarily cause ourselves deliberate pain, but we have to create those roadblocks in a way, which is like throw those challenges out in front of ourselves, which then in turn create the pain for us to want to go in that. We sort of, as conscious beings, we can create the necessity for change. We can actually be the ones who instigate the external forces, because we have other people in our lives, because we have books that we can read, because we have jobs that we can go to, because we can create deadlines for ourselves. All of these sorts of things are like roadblocks which create a challenge, or a more negative term for that is a pain in front of us, which is like a force upon us to move in a different direction. And then the question is asked, who is it that wants to change when the roadblock, when it's this very serious roadblock is put up in front? The answer is then everybody. Everybody wants to change when it's serious enough. And we can either allow these seriousnesses to come upon us and be reactionary, or we can be proactive and plan our benchmarks, if you will, which are kind of like roadblocks that we have to, but they're not like negative roadblocks that throw us back in time or put us off a cliff or whatever. They are roadblocks that we might have to climb, metaphorically, right, to help us to improve the quality of lives and to be able to live with the realization that we can actually make a difference in our lives, that we can actually put challenges in front of ourselves, grab a hold of them or get to them, and we're being proactive, but in the end we have to be active. We have to be reactionary to them, but we've prepared ourselves with a bit of planning and so on, and then it is a positive thing. And then it becomes the case of everybody wanting to change who's willing to do this. However, to be honest, it's still a very small percentile of people who probably do this on a regular basis. Everybody does it to an extent. Almost everybody has learned to ride a bike, has learned to speak, has taken on a certain course, has gone to a new job, has felt fear and worked on it anyway. We all do this, and that's a good thing to remember too, is we've all been up against challenges. Even if we tell ourselves, oh, I can't this, I can't that. Hang on a second here. We can look back at ourselves and things we've done and realize that, yes, we have in fact. They might not be grandiose, they might be minor, but this is what is the value of reason and evidence. We can reason it through, that we can, other people do, and we have. And we can remember back to the experiences when we have. That's like evidence. It's like, if I never saw a rock, but somebody used to explain to me and, it makes sense and all elements put together and what have you. And then, because I just lived in a very sandy area, muddy area, and then somebody came along to me and they said, hey, look at this little rock, feel it, have a look at it, toss it up in the air, catch it. It becomes real because now it's an experience, right? Empiricism, very powerful. Who actually wants to change? Well, when we're comfortable in our state, nobody is the status quo, right? But when we either have forces acting upon us and we're reactionary, then we want to change, or when we make the conscious decision for a reason that we come up with as very important for ourselves, and we actually put that in front of us as a challenge, like I like to use a simple example of, we're going to decide to build a house. Well, it's a lot of hard work and all that, so there's got to be a good reason for it, but nevertheless we put these benchmarks out there, and if we want to get the house built, there's no sense sitting on the couch and dreaming about it. At a certain point we have to get out there. There's going to be days when it's pouring rain and we're standing in the mud, we're hammering and so on. But all of these things force us to change. The question, I guess, comes down to it, are we the ones involved in putting up those challenges, or are we just reacting to the challenges that everybody else and everything else throws at us? I think that's the key one, isn't it? That's the important one. Because one of them is more, shall we say, free will. The other one is more deterministic. And though I think life is full of determinism and free will, the only thing that really matters as far as we're concerned and as far as what we can make a difference in is our free will. So let's use that free will and change in the ways that we want to. How about that for an idea? It's nice talking again. I'll talk to you again soon, and I'll try not to fall on this slippery log while I'm reaching up here to turn this thing off. All right.